Thanks, Andy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. You're here for the webinar titled Using Media Monitoring to Manage, Protect, and Grow Brands. My name is Carrie Abipal, and I'll be your moderator this afternoon. I'm in the marketing department at LexisNexis, sponsor of today's webinar. As you can see, LexisNexis is an industry leader providing information professionals with access to premium news, business, and legal content. More than 90% of Fortune 500 companies rely on LexisNexis to guide them toward informed, fact-based decisions and strategies. I'm joined by our three panelists, all of whom are media intelligence specialists with LexisNexis. Our panelists will walk us through various ways that Newsdesk, LexisNexis's media monitoring and analytics solution, can add value for and address pain points shared by PR professionals in higher ed, agency, and corporate communication settings. You can find more detailed information about our panelists on their LinkedIn pages, but by way of introduction, I'll give a brief overview. First, we have Rick Lombardo, Director of Enterprise Media Intelligence at LexisNexis. Rick is a 20-year veteran of the media monitoring and analysis industry. He helps design comprehensive media intelligence solutions for organizations needing to track industry, brands, competitors, and influencers across global media from all media types. We also have Jill Norris, Media Intelligence Specialist at LexisNexis. Jill specializes in customizing solutions to fit her clients' media intelligence goals, enabling them to uncover insights and drive action at their organizations. She's also helped some of the top law firms in the world as a solutions consultant for LexisNexis's strategic large legal market. And finally, we have Ryan Williams, LexisNexis Media Intelligence Specialist for large corporate accounts. Over the past few years, Ryan has been working with the Newsdesk platform to help CorpCom, research, and PR groups uncover key insights about their brand and core topics from the vast array of media content. As for the format of today's webinar, Rick, Jill, and Ryan will present key insights about how Newsdesk can uncover media intelligence that's key in managing, protecting, and growing your brand. We'll then open it up to a Q&A with the panelists. Please submit your questions to the host and presenter through the chat box on the right-hand panel of your screen. I'll read your questions, and unless otherwise specified, direct them to one of our panelists. I'd also invite everyone to participate in our live poll, as Andy mentioned at the start, which is also on the right-hand side of your screen. Your feedback is appreciated in guiding future webinar topics, as well as spotting additional questions and trends our panelists may address today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Rick to get us started.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone out there. Appreciate you taking the time of the day to listen to us and explore media monitoring solutions as it relates to your brands. As Carrie mentioned earlier, analysts from all industries, whether it's law, media groups, universities, governments, even global corporations and brands, rely on LexisNexis as the source of information for the reporting and analysis objectives. Groups are using LexisNexis because they can trust the results, they can access what they need quickly, and tell the story of their findings, ultimately proving the successes from their efforts. Whether you're part of a PR agency managing multiple brands or part of an internal communications department, you have unlimited access to this same content and tools to identify messaging for the brands that you own. Every day, we work with people that manage global brands and messages, and as a communications professional, you need to trust that you have access to everything, all media types, the content and the messaging and the entities you need to understand what's going on with the brand. You need the tools to pinpoint those specific messages, to narrow it down to your top-tiered influencers or sources, and the tools really to tell your story and prove the results of your efforts. There are many different platforms that solve part of that challenge, and LexisNexis gives you immediate access to everything that you need in one easy search tool, LexisNexis Newsdesk. You can search every media type. Across the wheel, you can see just the high-level media types that we aggregate in one place for you to search for your brand or for your end-user clients' brands. Traditional news from dailies or weeklies with licensed content that is coming directly from those publications in concert with publicly available content from across the globe and online news in over 12 feed classes. Some of this includes news wires, press releases, magazines, trades, but we also integrate the Globe's blog content, social media and social networks, even including photo and video sharing platforms, and television and radio broadcasts as they're broadcasting over the airwaves with video for you to pull back in near real time, perhaps for a satellite media tour or things of that nature. Newsdesk gives you the ability to search and track everything that matters to you and target really what are your efforts and confirm the messages that you're pushing out there. You save time by putting this all into one place. You've got licensed news, print, online news, blogs, social, TV in one place where you can cast a broader search, narrow it down to your findings, and really cut time in half in that daily clipping reporting. You can also use Newsdesk to uncover insights through the search itself and the entities that we present, as well as through the visualizations or the analytics, to really drill down from the broader conversation, the part that your brand is playing, and the competing messages that may be out there. Newsdesk also provides you with the full workflow for alerts, to newsletters, to exporting everything outside of Newsdesk, perhaps even integrating into your internal systems or databases. With that, I want to jump into a live view of Newsdesk with some sample content that I have as fodder for demonstration and to really show the functionality of Newsdesk. I'm now presenting Newsdesk with my login with some views to virtually every industry and unlimited search and ad hoc search and analytics for me to manage the brands that at least I'm presenting as a high level here today. I want to explain a little bit about the real estate so you understand what we're looking at as I log into Newsdesk. Across the top are the 4 primary functions, and these should be rather obvious to most, but a dashboard to place the things that matter, the results, the feeds, the analysis. I'm looking at a sample dashboard that I've constructed for the broader airline industry. And again, I've combined this search looking across the globe, all languages, all media types. I've looked at a general feed standing on top of the LexisNexis Smart Indexing so that I know these stories are about the airline industry. And then I was able to narrow it down to the specific brands that may be competing, at least in this view, airline brands. I can see coverage over time. I can see share of voice. I can interact to get more insights here from the visualizations. And I can even see those brands as they may come across with sentiment automatically assigned at either negative, neutral, or positive. And I can jump into this content right from this landing page. This is all structured and customized to how you want to view the content that matters. So you can move the widget to wherever you want and present the information to even jump in and start managing that content right from the dashboard or landing page. Dashboard is really just that. It's a place to see the things that matter. But it's important for me to also mention all the searches are represented over here on this left-hand navigation pane. And I've saved a few that matter to the airline industry. And then other industries I've placed in folders and subfolders so that I can quickly toggle back and forth. Important for me to once again emphasize, I've got unlimited searches here. So I really can jump in to an airline conversation down to specific brands or specific trends that have happened. And then I can jump into other conversations that may be related to pharma or insurance, museums, and really unlimited views. These all represent the searches and the dashboard. The other 3 functions and primary functions in Newsdesk is the ability to search, to build that search from scratch, analyze, to drag those saved searches into these visualizations that you're seeing here on the landing page, and then also to share, create crisis alerting. If I need to be notified the minute something breaks, I can steer this to identify what's happening, send to me immediately, and other key stakeholders, and save that distribution group. I can also construct more formal daily newsletters, my logo, a narrative, a header and a footer, and then all the content and snapshots of these visualizations to key stakeholders so that they can get a daily news brief refreshed to understand what's happening within the pulse of the conversation since the last interval. And there's other sharing tools in here that allow me to actually export that content out. So if I want to present to my intranet or other data systems, I can do that through exporting the content out of the system. I want to jump into kind of a specific result set, so we'll just grab, we'll switch it over to the search tab itself, where I've clicked on American Airlines, and I can see all the results, 52,257 from, again, across print, licensed news, publicly available online, some content behind a subscription or paywall, social, message boards, TV, and also feeds that I've added. I can quickly glance through the industry itself down to American Airlines, then start to understand my result set by the sources, the dates, the people mentioned within the articles, companies, organizations, convergence of topic. All of these facets on the right-hand side allow me to discover who's talking about American Airlines in this example, and then also refine it. So if I want to take it down to only certain types of mentions, I can do that on any of these facets, whether it's people presented in the stories or bodies of the articles themselves, or it's people who are writing about it, the influencers that you're reaching out to. I can isolate and discover who's talking about my competing brands. A nice view with inside here, again, I can start to manage the content. I can select ones that matter, that I need to share immediately by pushing ad hoc right from my view. I could print to PDF, print them out, tag them, clip them into separate folders, really to show my curation and my specific findings from the broader result set. One nice way to do that is through tagging, where you can take your convention. If you're measuring the messages that come through with a particular brand, industry, or event, I can simply go through and tag that content, everything in my view or specific articles, and then tag it with something that may matter. I have sample tags here, messaging types of tags. This could be workflow related, or it could be simply the way you categorize and confirm your part in influencing the messaging as it relates to your brand. So I could easily select what I want, select all in this case, tag, and assign it with crisis monitoring, put on my or inclusion to my pitch list, a specific press release, or quarterly reporting. All those can be assigned immediately, and then you can see them roll here. This is key. These tags stick with the articles. This is where time savings comes into play. I now can roll this and only that tagged or confirmed information into the analytics, into the clip reports, and into the exports so that I can then tell my story of what I have done. I did isolate a specific press release or event here, and you can see, and I've saved it as a separate search, and you can see how you might isolate all those results, again, across Twitter, print, broadcast, online news, blogs, and then you can see the convergence of the tags, and now I can understand, well, what sources are talking about this? What are the dates? What are the people inside those articles? What countries are these coming from? Or what markets, if I'm looking at domestic U.S.? So you really have that global to local view all built within here. I'll expand author so you can see a few examples of those as well. All of these facets, again, are used to show what's inside. They also feed those analytics so that when I roll up any of these results and I want to apply them in share of voice, coverage over time, word clouds, geographical representations, you have hundreds of variations of ways to visually tell your story right from the results that you've already considered and confirmed yourself. I'll click over to Analyze, and you can see I've got a separate environment built here. This is focusing on the more recent museum announcement from last week, or last weekend, and I kind of wanted to get an understanding of all the museums across the globe being discussed, and then really target into that specific coverage from over the weekend at the Smithsonian here in Washington, D.C. So in this case, I wanted to show I can isolate the domestic U.S. and understand where this content, where these messages are coming from. And I can actually click into this and look to see, well, what are they talking about in Texas? What are they talking about in Illinois? If you're doing work for a local or a market-specific type of museum, in this case, or event, you can tailor it down to that very local level. I may want to look, well, what media types are actually talking about this? So I've got this broken out automatically, so it can tell me what's coming from online news, what's coming from television or radio, what's coming from the blogs, print, all the way down to social video, social photo, and I can click into this to uncover what's going on. If I want to see broadcast, click that slice of pie, and then I'll see the resulting broadcast display below. This is just kind of one example of how I could either discover or help tell my story when I roll this to print reporting or clip reporting, et cetera. Here's all the articles that matched my search that are coming from only that media type. If I were breaking it down and really considering certain types of news, I could do the same and say, well, what's coming, it's speaking to a local audience versus a national audience versus press wires, trades, consumer, and many other categories that we have displayed in here. If I'm curious as what's coming from the trades that's related to this museum or any of the other searches I've displayed, airlines, pharmaceuticals, all those, we can tell that same story to see what are they talking about, and then look at what I've confirmed in the messages that I have actually confirmed through Newsdesk to tell the story about our efforts, either through press releases or influencing the influencers that are out there across all media types. Analyze is a great way to take those stories and take those results and really visualize them all at once. You can actually share that screenshot of that particular visualization or analytics to your dashboard. I can email it straight out from Newsdesk to take it out of the system to incorporate in external reporting tools. I can embed that interactive capability so that if I put this on my intranet, for example, recipients that would be going to that particular piece of analytics could also interact dynamically with this content to see the results. And also I can export these out in other ways. There are hundreds of variations of ways to tell the story: area and line, column and bar, pie charts, 3D charts, and other types of representations: word cloud, pyramid, funnel, and geographical. I just simply assign the searches that matter, and I can start to tell that story. And I can also revise this easily by date, by subject matter, location, and media type, and it will refresh that entire analytics view. If you are a PR agency, and I'll toggle back to the presentation quickly, you may want to actually have multiple environments. If you're seeing my slide at this point, multiple dashboards might be considered if you're an agency that has different clients in different offices or different people that need to be managing different clients. You can still all log into that same ecosystem, the same environment, the same foundation of information, and the same tagging tagging convention, but you may be able to multiple different permissioned environments: airlines versus insurance versus pharma versus beverages or specific brands. I can only present it through this slide because it really can't see four at the same time. But Newsdesk is scalable. If you're a PR agency, it can support all users, and again, from that same foundation of information. If you're an internal communications department, you may be wanting to divide these up based on different types of insights that you're constructing: our brands and spokespeople versus industry trends versus a competitive intelligence versus regulatory and updates to that industry in general. All that can be built once and then administrated through the platform. As I said before, if you manage brands and messages as part of an internal communications department, you have that same access that I gave and illustrated through the PR agency view. And you have that way to customize the searches and analytics and dashboards to those different departments. From the larger results, you can now confirm specific messaging, tag using your own metrics as we walked through, and then in that view, narrow it to the specific press release and the results that matter to the issue at hand and the brands that you're managing today. Having access to everything in one place makes it easier and saves man hours in compiling clip reports, newsletters, the workflow in distributing that information, and confirming results from your press release. And LexisNexis gives you that freedom to search everything and the tools to present your story. So we want to take a closer look now at a specific use case and how you may protect, grow, and manage your brand through Newsdesk. And I'm going to hand it off to Jill Norris. Jill?
In this next section, we're going to take a look at some internal communications examples, specifically from the academic world. Now, these are truly applicable across the board, whether you work in an agency environment, a corporate communications department, or an academic institution. But specifically, there are two key differences that I'm going to discuss today that are related to the academic context. But the first is that many schools are tasked today with accomplishing more with less resources. So while they must gain access to more and better information, budgets have been cut and they've not been able to hire as many people as they need to. Now, this means that academic professionals must wear many hats and be well-versed in many different disciplines, including journalism, public relations, marketing, communications, social media, and branding. And so the tools that academic professionals are relying on and the data they're using are going to be even more critical because of these budgeting constraints. Additionally, being able to consolidate platforms and find everything you need from one provider saves not only money, but precious time as well. It's almost inevitable that the more subscriptions you have, the higher your costs will be, and the more time you'll spend managing those platforms. Now, these are exactly the types of challenges that Newsdesk can help you solve. As we've mentioned previously, Newsdesk searches across the most comprehensive content collection available in the industry on one consolidated and easy to navigate platform. We have millions of sources across all types of media, including the open web, social media, licensed behind the paywall content, print, and broadcast. Having all of this content at your fingertips and being sure that you're not missing anything is especially important when you're performing multiple job functions, resources are fewer, and time is of the essence. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these with some real-world examples, including tracking the competition and staying on top of key industries, topics, and outlets using Newsdesk. So now more than ever, competition for top talent in the academic world is fierce. Schools are competing for students and professors, and they have an interest in gauging how their brands are represented in the media, especially when compared to other schools in their state, region, conference, or ranking level. So just like in the corporate world, schools have goals to meet and they must show ROI for communications, recruiting, and marketing efforts. Now looking at this next slide, you can see both a coverage over time chart on the left and a share of voice chart on the right comparing a number of different schools. These charts in particular are excellent ways of gauging the strength of your brand and easily keeping your finger on the pulse of your media coverage in relation to competing schools. In Newsdesk, your charts will update automatically with new information, and you'll be able to click on any of the points to see what might be causing spikes in coverage or other trends. Now, analytics are a wonderful way to visualize the results of your research, but they're only as good as the content that powers them. So we've talked a lot about the comprehensiveness of the content within the Newsdesk platform, but I also wanted to show an example here of the search screen just to point out the advanced filtering capabilities in the academic context and show you these metadata tags down the right-hand side of the screen. Now, as you saw with Rick's example as well, these are going to help you filter out noise and get down to the most relevant results for your research. Now, in addition to standard keyword or Boolean searching, you're also going to be able to search in Newsdesk by using these metadata tags. So as you can see, I've set up this particular search around colleges and universities, just general news there, and I've limited it to my state. So now in this way, I have an ongoing, near real-time feed to keep me up to date on developments in higher ed in my area. Maybe your school is particularly focused around certain areas of study or research, or you have experts speaking on certain topics and want to promote their work. So searching by metadata tags in Newsdesk is going to help you track important subjects, industries, outlets, journalists, and areas to use to promote your school's accomplishments and the strength of your brand. And of course, you'll be able to create informative analytics around these searches as well, as you can see from the examples on the next slide here, including 3D charts, word clouds, and heat maps. Now, we have over 1,000 different chart and graph combinations in the Analyze function of Newsdesk, so you're sure to find the charts and graphs you need to illustrate the metrics that you're relying on. Now, another key difference in the academic world is that your messaging goes out to many different groups of stakeholders, and these groups, they may get information in different ways and sometimes have competing priorities. Academic professionals must be able to identify and effectively speak to multiple groups, including existing students, prospective students, alumni, faculty, staff, parents, and the administration. Let's take a closer look at how this plays out in the context of navigating a crisis. Now, anyone who's been tuned into the news lately has noticed that colleges and universities are dealing with a lot of different issues as far as crises go. And on any given day, an institution could be dealing with any number of problems, such as the threat of a shooting, an act of sexual assault, or any number of scandals involving athletics, academics, or Greek life. Any issue, no matter how small or how large, can quickly become a reputational crisis, especially given the national and global reach of today's media coverage. Now, crises make the need for not only accurate but timely data even more critical. Being able to keep an eye on breaking developments across multiple media channels and get the full picture of your coverage can mean the difference between navigating a crisis and losing control. Newsdesk allows you to set up alerts down to the minute increment to stay on top of any and all coverage. Getting a handle on where your coverage is coming from and the information being disseminated about your school will help you formulate positive messaging and targeting different groups of key stakeholders with the appropriate message. At academic institutions, you must take into account that different audiences are going to access information in different ways. So it's important to be able to pinpoint which social platforms current students are using to discuss the crisis, or where an alum is likely going to get his or her information. And you can use this data to help push out positive stories about the handling of a crisis or other positive messaging to put the crisis behind you and move forward. Again, the breadth and depth of coverage in Newsdesk and the flexibility of the searching and filtering capabilities are going to save you critical time and headaches, particularly during these times of distress. The next slide here is going to show you some screenshots about setting up an alert in Newsdesk. It's very easy to do this, and again, you're going to see the search screen, so we just have the foundation. We build our searches and save them, and then you transfer over to the Newsdesk alert platform, easily drag and drop as many searches as you want to monitor there, and you can choose from any number of preferences to automate your alert. Charts like the one at left can be created to analyze which types of platforms or sources information about your school is being disseminated on and help you target those key stakeholders with your messaging. So now that you've seen how Newsdesk can help you do more with less and navigate a crisis, I'm going to kick it over to my colleague Ryan Williams, who will talk about the last piece in managing protecting, and growing your brand, which is measurement and meeting your business objectives.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. There you go, Ryan.
All right, thanks, Jill. So to focus on this last piece, and I would consider this measurement aspect it's important and probably even more important than the monitoring platform that you use, to harvest and grab all this information that you need. Without a clear-cut strategy, there's really no point to the monitoring process and no real story and value that you can come from that and push to your higher-ups. So I'm sure everybody on this call has some sort of boss that you report to, whether it be the director of your communications, whether it be the dean at your university, or even the board of directors for a big corporate business there. You've got to prove that the work you're doing in the PR space is giving back that ROI that they're expecting of you, not only from what the money they're investing in you, but then the messaging you're pushing out to help grow their brand the way that you all want as being part of that organization. So being able to identify good measurement objectives up front is going to help us create a much more streamlined workflow from a monitoring standpoint, and also give us the flexibility to adapt to whatever the industry is doing, and also to whatever our bosses and our board are asking us that we report on a day-to-day basis. So some of those examples would be to set up some different key performance indicators. What is it, or even just some competitive benchmarks of what is out there in the industry. How do you want to look at your brand compared to your competitors? What are your competitors messaging out there, and how do you guys want to prove yourselves different to give that competitive advantage over them? And then you want to be able to track these on a consistent basis. So one of those might be, I want to make sure my brand is known as being the most innovative that's out there. So as we go through the monitoring process, we're going to want to be able to identify those different indicators and benchmarks throughout the process, so that when we come down to actually combining and putting this all into a report, we can show that, hey, look how innovative we are compared to our competitors. Let's continue to harp on this message. Now, with that as well, we want to establish some success metrics so that we can say, hey, every time that we were, our objectives were mentioned, or messages were mentioned in this media, we want to be able to tie into how successful or not successful those messages are. So some of those may be traditional metrics and following Barcelona principles, some things like tonality, reach, impressions, quantitative numbers that we can assign actual scores to our mentions in the media. But there also might be some subjective things like your key message pull through. How often are the messages that you want to be tracking, are they pulling through? Are they not only being mentioned positively or negatively, but are they on target? Are they just slightly off target? Are they snarking, passing mentions? You want to get a fair degree of the kind of messaging that's getting out there, and also what's generated by you and what's generated or non-earned media by other authors, other outlets out there that are talking about your brand. And then, in conclusion with that, you want to make sure you want to identify the impact that that's going to have and those messages are going to have on your brand. So if someone out there is talking negatively about your brand, what's the impact that has on you, and what kind of messaging do you need to then use to combat that, and maybe use some type of quantifiable score to say, this is how I'm measuring my impact against, and then that's something you can give to your CEO to say, hey, here's how impactful these are, or this might have been negative content, but it's not really impacting our brand in a negative way, so we don't have to be as concerned about that. So you want to assign some type of impact score to that as well. And now the last piece here is coming into designing this as a custom reporting framework that your CEO, your board, your dean, someone needs to take all this insight, all this data, all these metrics, and you need to deliver it to them on an easy, ingestible format that they can actually make some business decision from, because they're not the ones that have all the time throughout the day to understand what's going on out there and what needs to be done about it. So you have to deliver this to them on a silver platter and say, what does my CEO need to know? They need to know where we're mentioned, by who, how we're doing, and what's my ROI that my PR group has given back to this brand. So how we deliver that can be in a lot of different ways, but it needs to be on a consistent basis so that we can actually have some patterns and some benchmarks historically to track this again, so you can continuously prove how your brand is growing, or if there's a decline, you can prove why there's that decline, but then provide a strategy for how we're going to build back up the way your CEO wants you to. So whether it's be on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, an annual basis, I think those are good, sort of bare minimum, reporting frameworks and frequencies. But then also on an ad hoc basis, as new events pop up, or like Jill mentioned, some different crisis situations that pop up throughout the year, throughout the day, we want to be able to ensure that we have a good reporting framework in place to deliver these to our powers that be above us. So I wanted to walk through a few different examples here of how some of my customers have put together these different strategies in this framework, and just provide some of those examples so that you can actually see it in person rather than just through a bullet point. So something like you're seeing on the screen now is taking a pretty large global brand and stripping it down to the exact messages that they want to push out there, how they want to be known, and then different coding and tagging hierarchies for what it is that they're going to track on a day-to-day basis as new content mentions their brand that's out there. So something like this can be very comprehensive. It can also be very, very simple. Maybe it's just a few key messages, on a scale of 1 to 5 that you want to see, and you're just tracking that on a day-to-day basis. Or it could be something even more complex, different topics, different types. A lot of the stuff that Rick was alluding to in the very beginning there, we want to be able to have that flexibility to adapt to that industry and adapt to what the media is saying about us, and then be able to use this tag data to then code and provide reports any which way that our CEO or our board is going to ask us to, because we may have one goal in mind as a PR group, but if that mindset shifts, or all of a sudden the business wants to take a new strategy, you need to have a back set of all that data already coded so you can adapt in the right way that you need to, and have it a lot easier to then drive the reports around that. So this is some examples here, different story types, different topics, certain organizations or competitors that they're tracking, and also different levels of whether it be tonality or message pull-through or something like that, and prominence. You want to get as complex as you can, of course, looking at as vast of a media content as possible as well. And each different media type, you probably have a different messaging that's pushed out there because everyone's going to talk in a little bit different way, whether it be on news versus broadcast versus social. You might want to have different messagings and different tagging structures set up for each one of those media types as well. And switching to the next slide, I wanted to give an example of something recently I was doing with one of my large financial groups, actually trying to draw some correlations between media content and their competitors in their industry, in the banking industry, and the stock price. Now, obviously, something like stock is only going to relate to public companies. I know not everyone on this call is going to have to be researching public companies, but stock price is just one variable that you could look at in comparison to everything else, whether it be just competitive mentions, it could be product sales, it could be anything else that might be unique into your industry. I just wanted to focus on one example here using banking, because we actually can draw some pretty interesting correlations here using media content, and as new things pop up, as more articles are written and more posts are written, what happens to stock price for any given company or even across the whole industry. And something that we were actually able to draw is that there was a correlation that when coverage peaked the day before, the stock price within the next 4 hours, or if it happened towards the end of the day, then the next morning, stock price really drove up around the same wavelength as the way media mentions were going too. So that's something that it could be on a one-off basis. You don't know that, but we need to find that, identify those correlations, tag it, track that, report on it, and then let's go back and do it again next week, next month, next quarter. Let's see if there's some pattern that we can identify, and then we can start to be a little more predictive as these things pop up. So as new events arise, or as new competitors are being talked about more as well, we can make some predictions as to what competitors are going to do and how their stock price is going to rise. Or if we know one thing that we've done very, very well that continues to drive, our stock price, let's continue to hit on that messaging. That's something you can take back in a report to your CEO and say the work that the PR people have done on our team to push this messaging has drove your stock price. It's going to make our shareholders happy. That's something that you have to prove to your CEO that they're looking for, and they're going to continue to invest in you, continue to invest in the PR space, and ultimately finding more and more patterns for how you can really grow that brand over time and consistently as well, because consistency is, I think, the biggest piece here to any measurement strategy. And one other example I want to show here is a way to just to prove it. Now, a lot of this is, you can show me good charts, you can show me good graphs. If we're not searching across as comprehensive a media set as possible, no chart is going to, as pretty as it may be, is going to be accurate enough to really drive the kind of insight that we need to. So we got to be able to prove that, show where we actually got picked up, prove that the work that we've done met or exceeded the expectations that we set up front. And so whether it be through something like this of showing media highlights and actually saying, hey, here's the article that we found in some of the influential sources. Here's another one that we picked up in a local blog that we weren't tracking to begin with, but has picked up some weight because it got shared across other media contents throughout, that next week. Let's spend more money in PR to focus on some of these new bloggers to help grow our brand that way. And then as an ongoing basis, you're going to protect that as well because you're going to measure it, whether it be through the alerts like Jill was talking about or through the ongoing monitoring that Rick was mentioning. You're going to be able to protect that brand and make sure that those messaging are still online. And as anytime anything shifts or changes negatively or positively, you're going to be aware of it right away using those alerts and the Newsdesk workflow to be able to shift your messaging to the right way, and then that way changes your reporting structure as well. So a lot of this I've shown using what can be used through just the basic, very easy and fast analytics inside Newsdesk, and that can all be done through one platform. You've done your reporting, you've done your monitoring, you've done your tagging, and it can all be funneled up into one consolidated solution for you. Another aspect of LexisNexis, though, is I find a lot of times the groups that I work with are either short-staffed, especially in the agency world. You get asked a lot from your clients and maybe have limited resources as far as what you can do. LexisNexis is here to be an extension of your team to help however we can. So we actually have a media analysis team internally that can either be a consultant for your group to help you identify some of those objectives, some of those KPIs and benchmarks that you want to set, and then you go on and do the reporting and monitoring yourself, and that's totally fine using Newsdesk. But there's also other ways to do much more comprehensive reporting, take a much deeper dive into any given topic, industry, element of analysis that might be out there, and designing this in any type of a framework or report style that you want, and then really just slap it on the desk and basically be an extension of your team to help you prove your ROI up to your CEO and your board members from there. So something as well, in addition to Newsdesk, worth considering, or even having a quick chat about it with our head of media analysis, just to get an understanding of where your brand's at, maybe what some of our recommendations would be from a consultant perspective, and then how we can implement those using Newsdesk on a day-to-day perspective. So with that, in conclusion, obviously the whole focus of today is how do we use media monitoring and measurement reporting strategies to manage, protect, and grow your brands. As what you've seen and heard today, the takeaways would be that you're managing your brand by monitoring the right messages across as comprehensive of a content set as possible. And by using Newsdesk, you're looking across the entire globe, all media types from online news, blogs, print, social media, trade journals, and even TV and radio broadcast content to really get the complete picture of how your brand is doing out there and what the messages are in each of those different channels to make sure that those signals are in alignment with each other the exact way that you as a PR group want to make sure they're on message. You're going to protect your brand by continuously constructing these different competitive intelligence dashboards that Rick was showing and setting up different real-time alerts like you saw from Jill so that you're always on top of anything that could be coming up and be a hindrance to your brand or something that you could capitalize on because your competitor released something that the market is not feeding well off of, or something that you find is going very well for your brand and you want to continue pushing that motion as long as possible. That's something you want to protect on an ongoing basis and monitoring that on a consistent basis. And then ultimately you're going to grow your brand through the measurement strategies of setting appropriate KPIs and benchmarks so you can compare where you are against your competitors or against different topics, against different key messages so you know which ones are working and not and where you can adapt and grow. And then measuring that success on a consistent basis, whether it be weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual, as well as those ad hocs. A consistent basis is really going to drive success, going to continually prove the work that you're doing has been valuable to your company and continue to get those resources and investments in the PR space that we know everyone needs in order to make sure that the brands are growing the way that they're supposed to. And with all that, you'll be able to tell the story, and not just any story, but the right story, using the right messaging not only to your customers externally or to the media, and so making sure that they're saying the right message that you are by pushing out those press releases, but also to your team internally. Tell the right story about why PR is valuable, why your job and what you're doing is a focus and a key component to making sure the brand is growing and the shareholders are happy, the rest of your board and CEO and executive level are happy. tell that story to them in an easy way to continually, get those resources on an ongoing basis. With all that, Newsdesk from a monitoring standpoint and the reporting piece from a measurement standpoint, I think gives any PR group a complete solution to do the entire PR workflow from start to finish in a very seamless, fast, and easy-to-use way. So with that, I'm going to flip it back over to Carrie now, and we're going to, I think, open it up to some Q&A. But before I leave, I want to just thank everyone for your time. If there are any other specific questions on measurement or any other aspects of the monitoring piece, we'd love to hear them, and we're happy to take those at this time.
Thanks, Ryan. So that's a wrap on the presentation portion of today's event. So as he mentioned, we'll head into the Q&A, but before we do, just a reminder to everyone on the call to participate in our live poll on the right-hand side of the screen. So with that, I'll start with the first question for the group. Can you provide a specific example of how Newsdesk has helped a customer to grow their brand?
And this is Rick Lombardo. I think that's a great question. There are a lot of examples. I think one that comes to mind is a global consulting firm who is analyzing their voice versus the voice of their competitors. And they're isolating that in Newsdesk by understanding, their assets and their competitors' assets as it relates to insurance. And so they're looking at that. What are our competitors saying? They're able to confirm those messages. They're able to confirm where they're playing as it relates to their very specific spin on insurance and innovation and applications for digital usage, et cetera. And they confirm those voices and isolate them in Newsdesk. That's step one. They're able to visualize that. They're able to then see breakdown by their end user client versus their competitors and do the same. Staying in front of, number one, discovering and understanding the messages as it applies to their industry is extremely important. It's how they get in front of that message to understand, but also very importantly, how they shape messages going forward. And when we talk about growing your brand, it starts there. And Newsdesk, I think, gives them that freedom with unlimited search, but yet the tools to narrow it to just their voice and versus competitors. And then in order to tell that story so that the people that are constructing those messages and innovating new ways to look at insurance, they're able to do that through their mining of Newsdesk.
Yeah, Rick, and this is Ryan. I had one other example as well I think would be good to focus on. I'll try to keep it quick. I was working with a PR agency that was responsible for protecting a skincare client and their brand. And what they were trying to do is trying to figure out how they could really grow that to reach a broader audience of this skincare line that obviously is a pretty saturated market, I think, with a lot of different products out there and a lot of competition. And what they were able to identify using Newsdesk was actually a tweet from one of a big-time celebrity talking about and complaining about their skincare and actually, and how their face was breaking out recently. And so what they were able to do is use that and getting approval from the client, sending that celebrity, a sample of their product, and then use Newsdesk and then follow up with that celebrity, and actually saw them post pictures and write a little blog about it as well as a tweet that then reached a broader audience because that celebrity ended up using their product. And that right there was able to then grow their brand because from that led to a lot more sales from anyone that was following that celebrity on their different social media profiles. And this PR agency was able to capture all that in the very beginning by using Newsdesk to identify someone in need of their product. Let's find this to identify a new pitch, a new ambassador that we can go after, and through some simple, samples, but then also ongoing monitoring, they can then show the client, here's because of this work that we did, here's how we grew it, and here's all the other people now that you can attribute those sales to. If it wasn't for this, this one find the celebrity that we found for you. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Ryan and Rick. I have another question that just came in. How does this integrate into building a distribution list for targeting writers and reporters who are creating these specific stories?
Oh, that's a great question. So many groups, as I kind of used in an example previously, you can discover what influencers are talking about your brand, competing brands, industry, events, etc. That's one of the facets we showed on the right-hand side when I looked at the results. So if you remember, I cast a search in general against the airline industry, but I'm able to see across all media types, print, online, social, what authors are writing about it. I may also already know those influencers and authors and handles, and that I can assign and select and determine what are these people saying about the brands, what are they saying in general, is there a negative, neutral, or positive spin on the way they're engaging with those brands, products, or issues, and then I can incorporate that to my pitch list. One of the tagging conventions I showed allows me to save those influencers, tag them with whether or not they're on point, on message, off message, if they're on my influencer list or integrated within my pitch list. And so it gives you that view to discover. It also gives you that view to confirm that these are, in fact, influencers and ones that you would include on future pitch lists. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question we have, so why not just Google Alerts?
I'll take that one. So, it's great to have Google Alerts, and I think that they can certainly complement any type of monitoring that you're doing. But, an alert is only going to be as good as the content behind it. And with Newsdesk, you're going to get just the depth and breadth of coverage that you're getting in Newsdesk. It's so much more than what you will get from a Google Alert. Additionally, we receive our alerts or our information about 2 hours faster than Google Alerts. And using a platform like using the Newsdesk platform, as Rick and I both discussed, you're going to have those rich filtering capabilities. You're going to be able to really narrow things down and isolate the information that's most important for your research. So just the functionality and the content is going to be so much more than what you can get from a Google Alert. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect. Yes, thanks, Jill. Another question for the group. In your opinion, which industries are fully leveraging media monitoring and are there others that are not?
I can take that one. This is Ryan. I think it's a great question. I also think that it sets up Newsdesk very well because the nice thing about Newsdesk is that it's really industry agnostic. I mean, as Rick was showing, whether it be airline industry, pharma, banking, anything else that might be out there, academics, there's really no group or no industry that is utilizing it more than the other or can take better advantage of it than another. It's all media content out there. Every different group within an organization cares about what media is saying. They all just might look at it in a different way. And so I don't think there's really any one specific industry that can take advantage of it more or that may not even be using it at all. I think from the first slide we could tell that LexisNexis as a whole, working with 90% of the Fortune 500 and even more than that, in the small to mid-market as well, really about every brand out there is taking advantage of the monitoring capabilities and the information that LexisNexis is offering. So with that said, I think it just sets it up that every different industry cares about this content. They have a need for this content, and they have a need to be able to monitor that on an ongoing basis, as well as any sort of measuring and reporting structure around that. I've worked with every different industry that's out there pretty much. So, Rick or Jill, if you have anything else, but I would say it pretty much fits all different industries and no one in particular over another.
Okay, great. Does anyone else on the call have anything else to add to that? We have another question, but before I move on. Okay. If not, next question, are there any mistakes that people make when they are monitoring or analyzing media?
That's a good question. It's Rick Lombardo again. I think when you're exploring content, and this is going to sound a bit redundant, but if you don't have access to everything that's out there, you're going to get part of that conversation. Oftentimes, it's a game of, hey, I just want to check off the specific articles and posts or segments that matched to my my pitch list or my press release alone. And you may not have access in the tools you have today, certainly not in a Google type of search environment, to really look broader. and the flexibility to search outside of those parameters. So I may think that the keywords I use to monitor something are going to capture everything, but unless you've got that freedom to search everywhere and use other keywords to understand and discover and find out how it was represented in different media types, you might miss part of that story. You might miss part of confirming part of your success if you don't have that freedom to search around, and that's what I was trying to emphasize at the start of the call. If it's on TV, it may not say the name of the person who's actually speaking all the time. Sometimes that's in a graphic or it's taken out of context. But having access to search unlimited throughout all those media types lets you find everything, then confirm it, tag it, and roll it up into a clip report.
Excellent. Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, that will be it for the end of today's webinar. Thanks again to everyone on the call for your time and for the thoughtful questions we received. We hope everyone's gained some valuable tips and strategies that you can apply in your day-to-day with media intelligence. As a reminder, today's session has been recorded and will be emailed to everyone on the call if you'd like to revisit it at a later time or know of someone who may benefit from the recording. And as a reminder, for those who would like a closer look at how Newsdesk can bring your own brand to life, please be sure to request a personalized Newsdesk consultation in our post-webinar survey. You can also visit LexisNexis.com/Newsdesk for more information. I hope you'll join us again for future LexisNexis webinars. Stay tuned for announcements about our upcoming events by following our Biz blog, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages. Have a great afternoon.